Part 11, Chapter 25. Red Badger was one of the first crewmen revived from hypersleep. He stretched and yawned, then carefully unplugged the leads that connected him to the central sleep inducer. He looked around. The rest of the crew was starting to revive. Cheerful music was playing over the PA system. There were sounds of coughing and spitting as men cleared their throats for the first time in almost a month. Coffee was available at a little table. Crew were always given coffee mixed with a new amphetamine upon first awakening. It was needed to help them throw off the effects of hypersleep. Badger sipped at a black, sweetened cup of coffee and felt his head clear. "You okay, Red?" It was Walter Glint, his sidekick. "Yeah, I'm fine." "Min?" The Laotian hillwoman grunted her assent. "Connie?" "I'm great, Badger," Connie Mindano said. "You figure this might be a bonus run?" "For extra hazardous duty? They haven't said yet." "I hope so." "Why?" "I've got a ranch house in Baguio I'm trying to pay off." "There just might be easier ways," Badger said. He looked around. "That's funny." "What's that, Red?" "They usually post the ship's destination in the crew quarters. But look for yourself. The board's empty." "Yeah, that is funny," Glint said. "But there's a notice there." Badger said, "I can see it, dummy. General Assembly in 20 minutes. The captain and the owners gonna talk to us." Glint said, "You've been on these ships longer than I have. That's not the way they usually do it, is it, Red?" "Nope." Badger scratched his jaw. "I'll bet they're up to something. This might be interesting, Glint." The loudspeaker said, "All crew, assemble at once in the main theatre." Stan and Julie walked out onto the raised stage. The crewman looked up attentively when he rapped a pointer on the lectern to get their attention. "Our destination is not far away now," Stan said. "It is a small O-type star named AR-32 in the standard catalogue. Around it revolves a single planet, with several good-sized moons to keep it company. These moons create violent and unpredictable weather currents on the planet, which has been named Vista. Captain Hoban, do you know anything about this planet?" Hoban had been sitting to one side of the stage. He cleared his throat and said, "I have heard of the place, sir. They used to call it the Festa Hole, back when there were still a lot of pirates and privateers operating in the space lanes. There was once a jelly-gathering operation there, involving one of the bionationals. That was some years ago. To the best of my knowledge, it has been deserted since." Stan thought, good old honest Hoban, telling the crew more than they needed to know. Still, they'd have to find out sometime what this mission really involved. The crew stirred and looked at each other. This talk of the Festa Hole was making them uneasy. What was this assignment anyhow? What was it that the powers wanted them to do this time? No one had spoken about a bug hunting expedition. That called for extra pay. There was a rising murmur of protest from the crew. The greatest menace of recent times were the aliens, those big black monsters who had been pushed off Earth with difficulty, and elsewhere continued to show their murderous abilities in the face of everything Earth had been able to throw against them. Badger rose to his feet and said, "Sir, this wouldn't by any chance be a bug hunting expedition, would it?" "Not exactly," Stan said. "Then what exactly is it, sir?" Stan ignored the red-haired crewman's insolent tone. "This is basically a salvage operation," he said. "We'll be taking a load of royal jelly off a wrecked freighter." "Yes, sir," Badger said. "And aren't the bugs going to have something to say about that?" "Our information is that there are no bugs on the wreck. We'll go in fast, take what we need, and be out of there again. There's also the possibility that we'll find an abandoned hive on the planet. The jelly in that could be worth millions." Walter Glint said, "Nothing was said about bugs when we volunteered, sir." "Of course not," Stan said. "My information is secret. If I told you back on Earth, half the freelance salvagers from Earth and the colonies would be there now." "Bugs can be dangerous," Glint said. "Not when you take precautions," Stan quickly put in. "You were warned that this was hazardous duty. You're not getting time off your sentences for sitting around in some holiday spot. And remember, there's bonus pay in this for all of you. It could come to quite a lot if the salvage is as rich as I think it is." "How much?" Badger asked. "That's impossible to calculate before we have it," Stan said. "Don't worry, there is a standard formula for crew shares. And I intend to double it." The men cheered. Even Badger smiled and sat down. This was interesting, he thought. He wondered what would come next. Chapter 26. Stan rapped for attention, but before he could get started again, a door opened and a man came in. He moved rapidly and with a strange grace, a cross between a glide and a lope. His face was expressionless. Although all of his individual features were human, the total result was not human at all. The crew knew at once, even before the introduction, that this man was a synthetic. Captain Hoban's introduction clinched the matter. "People, this is Gil, an artificial man from the Valparaiso People Facility. He's the second in command." "Sorry to be late, Dr. Myakovsky," Gil said. "I just finished the energy readings." "No problem, Mr. Gil. Take a seat." Gil sat down by himself in the back of the room. Gil was a solitary. In recent years, the People Factory in Valparaiso, Chile, where many of the better synthetics were produced, had been doing an improved job on skin colors and texturing. Gone was that old look of damp putty that had once characterized synthetic people and had provided a basis for so many jokes by bad comedians. Now, The only reliable visual gauge for detection of an android was the speed of their comprehension responses. That, and a certain mechanical jerkiness to their movements, since the final stage of fairing the input levels and ranges of the synthetics' operating systems was a slow, expensive process, and many employers didn't care if a synthetic's hand trembled, as long as he didn't drop the test tube or light stylus or whatever. Despite their artificial origins, synthetic men were full-fledged members of human society, with voting rights and a sexual program. Stan was about to go on, but just at that moment, from an outer corridor, Mac the dog came trotting into the room. He had a bright blue rubber ball in his mouth, and he looked around expectantly. Someone in the crew laughed. "Ha! Fetch it here, boy!" And then something else came into the room behind him. It came loping in on all fours, and at first glance it looked like a beetle the size of a rhinoceros. It was coloured a shiny, unrelieved black. Its skull was very long and curved back over its shoulders. It was toothed like a fiend and taloned like the devil itself. It was Norbert, and he looked like he had just come from hell. There was silence for one long, straining moment, and then pandemonium broke loose. The crew scrambled to their feet and started running for the exits. Their work boots clattered on the metal deck as they surged towards the exit door, trying to push each other out of the way. Stan grabbed the microphone and shouted, "Just stay where you are! Do not make any aggressive movements! Norbert will not harm any of you, but he is programmed to resist aggression. Just stay calm." It was not a calm-making situation. Yet, even now, catastrophe could have been averted. The crew was quieting down, coming out of its panic, starting to make jokes. Norbert was just standing there, making no sign that he was going to attack anyone. And then he was bending, slowly picking up the dog's rubber ball, throwing it back to him. It could have ended right there, but there was always a wise guy around, someone who had to push things a little too far. This time, it was a crewman known as Steroid Johnny, an over-muscled hunk in a skimpy t-shirt, tight jeans, and a lineman's boots, who carried an unlicensed presser rod in his boot and liked to cause trouble. Steroid Johnny saw his chance now. "Come on, Harris," he said to a lean, grinning blonde man lounging beside him. "Let's take this sucker down. Shouldn't be no aliens here anyway." The two men advanced on the motionless robot alien. Steroid Johnny winked at Harris, who went slinking around to the right, picking up a crowbar from a toolbox as he went. The robot's head swiveled, keeping both men under surveillance. Johnny feinted to his left, then went straight in at Norbert. 5 feet away, he stopped and turned on his presser beam. He directed it at Norbert's back-sloping head. Norbert was pushed back, hard, for a moment. Then the big robot shrugged his way around the presser beam, ducked under it, and was moving towards Johnny. Johnny backed up and tried to get the presser beam into a blocking position, but Norbert moved faster, lunged forward, his jaws opened, the inner jaws shooting out of his mouth. The presser beam fell to the deck. Johnny tried to get out of the way, but Norbert already had one big hooked claw clamped on his left shoulder. Johnny screamed as he was lifted straight into the air by the skin of his shoulder. He hung there in Norbert's grip, screaming, struggling to break free. Norbert's inner jaws, impelled with all the energy of his powerful crystal mesh throat muscles, drove through Johnny's chest, splitting him like a side of beef. Norbert dropped the red, dripping thing to the deck and turned, ready for the next one. Harris, seeing the way things were going as he ran to attack Norbert, tried to pull up in mid-stride. Too late. Norbert swung around like a grotesque yet graceful ballet dancer and struck out with one of his taloned feet. The blow landed high on Harris's sternum. Norbert's talons made an audible hissing sound as they cut through the air, driven by the force of his heavy shoulder muscles. The talons ripped Harris apart from the left shoulder blade to his right hip bone. Harris opened his mouth to scream, but no sounds came out. His lungs had been punctured by the blow. He made an ugly squishing sound as he fell to the deck. The rest of the crew took this in and froze in position. They had never seen anything move as fast as Norbert when he was aroused. Norbert halted, looking around. He seemed about to attack again. Just in time, Stan shouted out the shutdown order. "Priority override! Code Myrmidon!" Norbert froze in position, awaiting further orders. It was a moment of balanced possibilities. The crew seemed on the verge of panic, ready to run out of the control room, screaming. Captain Hoban gulped hard and felt nausea at the back of his throat, but he knew he had to control the men. He got a hold of himself and said coolly, "Two of you there, get pails and mops and clean up that mess. See what comes of not following orders? This didn't have to happen. Now get a move on." There was an awkward, sullen moment, and then the crew obeyed. And the ship Dolomite hurtled on towards its rendezvous with AR-32. Chapter 27. Subdued, the crew returned to their quarters. The men seemed dazed, unsure of what to think. All of them, except Min Dwin, the Laotian hill woman. She went directly to her bunk and pulled out her space bag. From it, she took out a long object in a flat leather sheath. She pulled it free. It was a machete, sharpened to a razor edge. Badger said, "What are you up to, Min?" "Those bastards killed Johnny," Min said. "I'm going to get me some officer meat." "With that, they'll cut you down before you get within 10 feet of them." "Maybe I can pick up a gun. One of those that fires the soft slugs. I'd like to see that weird doctor with the glasses take one in the gut." She started towards the passageway leading back to the main ship stations. "Hold on a minute, Min," Badger said. She stopped and turned. "Yeah, what is it?" "Johnny was your man, huh?" "Yeah, it was a recent thing. Now it's over. What about it?" "Come over here and sit down," Badger said. Reluctantly, she complied, sitting on a locker with the machete balanced on her knees. Min, I understand you're plenty pissed off. I wasn't all that fond of Steroid Johnny or his friend Harris, but I wouldn't have wanted what happened to them to happen. Right, so this. It was Johnny's own fault, Min. It would never have happened if that professor guy hadn't brought that thing along. Sure, that thing he calls Norbert is obviously dangerous. But so what? We work around dangerous stuff all the time. That's what we volunteered for. I know, but Johnny disobeyed a direct order. He thought he knew better. I have to say it, Min, but him and Harris got what they deserved. I never thought I'd hear you saying this, Red, Min said. Whose side are you on, anyhow? You suddenly turned into a company man? I'm just telling it like it is, Badger said. It's like somebody told Johnny not to stick his hand into a buzzsaw and he went and did it anyway. Who would you kill then? Min twisted her fingers together in an agony of indecision. I don't know, Red. It just doesn't seem right to leave it. You're right about that, Badger said. But now is not the time to do anything about it. You go walking out of here with that machete and they'll put you down fast and ask questions later. Aren't we going to do anything? Sure we are, but not now. When then? Look, Badger said. Don't push it with me. I know you're sad over Johnny. You'll get over it soon and find someone else. As for what we're going to do, we're going to wait and see how things develop. When we make a move, if we do, they won't be expecting it. Is that fair enough? Yeah, Min said. I guess it is. You got any drugs on you, Red? Walter here takes care of my supply. What have you got, Glint? Glint had a first-rate stock of assorted chemicals. He was the crew's supplier, and he always had plenty to sell. Try this one, he said, taking a pillbox out of his space bag and shaking out 2 into his hand. This'll make you forget Johnny ever existed. If you like them, I'll make you a good price for 100. But these 2 are on the house. Thanks, Walter, she said. Hey, what are friends for? Said Walter Glint.